All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the August 8th edition of the City of Evanston's Administration and Public Works Committee. My name is Jonathan Nusma, council member from the 4th Ward. Chairing the committee meeting this evening, with a quorum being present, I will call the meeting to order at 5:06 p.m. And Deputy Manager Stonebeck, can you just take the roll, please?
Councilmember Burns. Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Nusma.
Here. Moving right along, if either Councilmember Kelly or Reed would like to make a motion on the minutes from last month.
I move the minutes of our
Second.
last meeting.
Councilmember Reed has moved and Councilmember Kelly has seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved, which brings us to public comment. I understand we have 4 people signed up so far, and we'll just take them in order. Annette Price is the first. Prince, I'm sorry. Ms. Prince, is she in person or online?
She's supposed to be online.
Annette Prince, going once, going twice, we will come back.
I was mute, now I'm ready.
There we go. Okay,
I'm here,
Ms.
I'm here.
Prince, you have 2 minutes.
Yes, here we go. My name is Annette Prince, and I am the Director of Chicago Bird Collision Monitors, which is a conservation project working to advocate for the protection of migratory birds from the hazards of building collisions. I'm also Chair of Bird Friendly Chicago, a collaboration of Chicago Bird Collision Monitors, Chicago Audubon Society, and the Chicago Ornithological Society. I'm here just to indicate today that the design guidelines that are being proposed to be adopted by the City of Evanston are following those that were developed for the City of Chicago by consultants and bird experts from Bird Friendly Chicago. These bird-friendly design requirements are in the process of being implemented by the Chicago Department of Planning. These requirements and guidelines for this type of reduction and prevention of bird collisions are in the process of implementation in many other cities in the United States, as well as Canada, New York, and Toronto have such in place. And I strongly support the adoption of those by the City of Evanston.
Thank you very much. Next on the list is Francine Allen. And Ms. Allen, as I indicated earlier, I will be happy to invite you to address the committee when we get to your agenda item as well, but you have 2 minutes now to get started.
There's some pictures of my situation, okay. Thank you. On Friday, I checked the city website for the APW agenda, and I was thrilled to see Resolution 63R22 had been added to the agenda, and I was very thankful for that. I felt hopeful the city was going to do the right thing to help me and others in this situation. I had to fight with the city to expedite a permit, plead with the city to work with the state to increase the daily work hours from 6 to 8 to avoid another day of lane closure at $2,500 per day, beg the city to allow the excavation site to be filled with regular cement until the asphalt plants reopened in May so my repair could be done in March. The city, knowing full well what I was facing, never reached out to see if they could help me with even the simplest tasks. This is on top of the fact that in August 2020, when I first started having sewer issues and called the city, a sewer maintenance supervisor came to my house while the sewer line was being hydrojetted to review the plumber's video. He claimed the pipe looked clear and he did not see any indication of a collapsed or damaged pipe. I've been pleading with the city for financial assistance and advocating for a fair resolution whereby the resident pays an above-average fair share and the city pays the remainder or a portion of the remainder based on household income. Today, I was made aware some council members would vote against this resolution because they believed it would open the city up to a $50 million liability. The numbers used to create this scenario are flawed and are meant to scare the council into rejecting this resolution. The numbers assume all sewer services considered at risk due to depth, location, soil consistency, etc. would fail at once. Approximately 1,700 sewer lines, like mine, requiring $30,000 reimbursement need to occur to impose a $50 million liability for the city. At 2 failures per year, that's 833 years. At 10 failures per year, that's 170 years. Over the past 18 months, I've asked repeatedly for the number of residents in the last 5 years who had sewer repair bills as high as mine, and asked how many people were currently in a similar situation. The answer was always 1 or 2. But now I see on the analysis that there were 5 in 2021 and 10 in 2020, 5 in 2020 and 10 in 2021. Where'd they come from? I've been asking
Ms. Allen,
repeatedly.
we're past 2 minutes.
Okay,
So
thank
as
you.
I indicated, we'll be happy to re-engage with you when we get to that agenda item.
Okay. Councilman Kelly proposed a fair reimbursement plan. I hope it's adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Vasilko. Mr. Vasilko, I don't see you in the room.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yes, go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you. I think agenda item A5 should be rejected. Staff is recommending entering into a contract with a contractor who apparently was the sole bidder on the resurfacing of 14 tennis courts and 1 basketball court, 4 of the courts being at Robert Crown, by the way, which is brand new. Only 1 bidder replied. They should send out the bid, reissue it, more widely advertised. If the work can't be done this year, it should be done next year. And this particular bidder has no MWEBE participation, which, should not be accepted either. So please reject item A5. Item A8, I guess I'm just curious if this item for the Hirons for community engagement for programming needs, is that something that qualifies to be taken from TIF money as it's being proposed? So that's item A8. Item A9, there are 3 new vehicles being requested, none of which are electric vehicles. So especially you, Councilmember Nuisma, should reject this item. These vehicles should be researched to see which of them can become electric vehicles. CAT makes heavy equipment now that is electric, so staff should do more research. Please reject this item tonight. Agenda item A19 for the Green Building Ordinance. I'm in agreement, basically, but there's no reason why it shouldn't include projects and renovations under 10,000 square feet as proposed. So that should be amended so that all projects, all commercial projects, all residential projects going forward need to meet the green building ordinances. Please.
That's 2 minutes, sir.
And what obligation does the city of Evanston have for this new District 65 school building? If somebody could just explain the financial implications. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vasilko. I understand we have Sue Lobach signed up as well.
Yeah,
So is
I'm
it-
here. Apologies, I should have signed up for P and D. I don't need to speak right now.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
See you again in hopefully an hour.
Okay.
All right, is there anybody else, either in person or online, who wishes to take advantage of public comment?
Hi, it's Leslie Shad. I did sign up for public comment.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you so much. I just want to speak on behalf of Bird Friendly Evanston and CGE, Citizens Greener Evanston, and Natural Habitat Evanston. All are very much in support of the Bird Friendly Ordinance. Annette Prince from Chicago Audubon just spoke about them, so I'm not going to take much time. But I do want to mention that for years, since 2014, I and Libby Hill, on behalf of Bird Friendly Evanston, have been working with developers on these issues, and many of them have agreed to go ahead with remediations or changes to their plans. But without an ordinance, we can't enforce that. And, I'm not even holding it against the developers. Cost compromises happen, changes happen, and we have no way of tracking what actually went through. So we're really encouraging the ordinance. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else online or in person, going once, going twice? All right, let's move on with items on the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to remove any items from consent? Which is items A1 through A13.
A5, A8, and A9.
A5, A8, and A9. Anybody else? Council members Burns, Reed. I will also remove item A10. So if somebody would like to make a motion on the consent agenda, which includes items A1 through A13, with the exception of items A5, A8, A9, and A10.
I move the consent agenda. Oh, that's not called consent.
That's not a consent. Okay, so it's been moved by Councilmember Reed, seconded by
Second.
Councilmember Burns. And again, this is the consent agenda, items A1 through A13, with the exception of A5, A8, A9, and A10. It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda carries, with the exception of A5, A8, A9, and A10. So that brings us to item A5. If
I will
somebody would
move
like to
item
make a
A5, contract award with Chicagoland Paving Contractors Incorporated for tennis court resurfacing tennis court resurfacing project, bid number 2249.
motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Reed, seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Is there any discussion on item A5? Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm concerned that we only received one bid, and because this is nearly $500,000, and we're exempting the waiving MWEBE requirements, participation, I'd like to see this go out more widely and get more bids. I also, this is for the resurfacing of the courts. Could someone also explain, are the Robert Crown tennis courts, those are new courts or old courts? Why would those be getting resurfaced right now? Is there anybody here to respond to? Oh, thank you.
The tennis courts were not part of the Robert Crown project. They sit way at the northwest corner, right by the intersection of Dodge and Lee, and they were not under construction at all during the building construction.
Okay, so these are the ones that were there prior to the construction?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or discussion?
Yeah, so it also, I feel like this could be done next year. Is this amount of money budgeted for this year, just to be clear, for these courts?
I believe so. Just give me 1 second, please. Yes, there is money budgeted in the general obligation bonds for this work, and this is the second time that we rebid the project. We bid it once before and received no bids at all, and then we rebid it again, and we have this one bid.
Okay, so it was scheduled for this year with our,
If it gets awarded at this time, yes, it'd be able to complete it this year. If we don't award tonight, we'd have to wait until next year to do it.
in terms of our budget, this is within what we had allotted.
It's a sale of GO bonds, so it was in what was approved with the budget. The GO bonds have not been sold yet.
Okay, so, is that what you would, I'm just surprised, I don't know how wide we went, but that we just have one for such a large job, only one. Can you speak to that a little bit? Is that?
So these are generally street pavement contractors that do this work, and this is a lot more tedious than paving a street because you have to work around the fence, get your equipment in, and then not only pave the street, but then have to put the markings on the court and everything like that. So it's a lot more labor intense, and the profit margin isn't there. So even though it is a large project, companies just don't seem to want to bid on this. We've had this situation previously where we don't get a lot of bidders for tennis court and basketball court resurfacing.
Great, thank you. I appreciate answering all my questions. I am a tennis player, so I do enjoy nice courts, but I just wanted to be sure that there wasn't any, I'm disappointed to see that we have to waive the MWEBE participation on this because of the only getting one bid, but thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Burns, Reed, you good on this one? All right. I just want to acknowledge that there are an additional 20 courts throughout the city that are not included in this project. So Public Works worked with the Parks and Rec Department to kind of prioritize which ones needed the most immediate attention.
That's correct. Some of these have some fairly significant cracking in them. We have a tree root issue out at James Park, so the courts are not in good condition, and they're well past their life cycle for being resurfaced.
Right. And at this point, we're not doing any dedicated courts for pickleball. Some of these courts will be lined for both.
That's correct. So I'm just going to use James Park as a reference. I know that there's 4 tennis courts there. So on 2 of those courts, we will put the pickleball markings on as well as the tennis courts. The other 2 will be just tennis. So half of the courts at any particular site will get the pickleball markings.
Great. I've been starting to hear more and more about pickleball, so in the future, let's talk about some dedicated pickleball courts. Not for right now, though. Oh, and we do have Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, it just
Thank you.
want to acknowledge, thank you. I'm excited to see that the courts at James Park are going to be retrofitted. And so I'm sorry, to be clear, did you say that there will be pickleball markings at the James Park court or not?
Yes, and looking at the memo, there's actually 6 courts at James Park. 3 of them will have pickleball markings on them.
Okay.
So half of the tennis courts at any site will have the pickleball marking.
I would love to. I think James Park is a good location for that. I've heard that pickleball can be kind of loud. I've heard that it's kind of a loud sport and it can make quite a bit of racket with rackets. And so I think James Park is a pretty good location. It's pretty separated. I'd still love to just keep folks updated, and maybe someone from Parks and Rec can talk about this resurfacing. And I'm sorry, one last question, when do we plan on this work being concluded?
We would hope that, weather permitting, it will be all completed this year, so.
So in time for
By
the
the end
beginning
of
of
fall,
the
yeah.
spring session for?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
We'll get
This
done
year,
in
within-
2022.
Okay, great.
That is the intent.
Wonderful.
Weather permitting.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Great. Seeing no further discussion, I will call the question on this one. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item A5 carries unanimously, bringing us to item A8. If somebody would like to make a motion on item A8.
Move item A8 contract award with, what are we saying, Harans for community engagement for programming needs at Gibbs Morrison and Fleetwood Jourdain.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded, and it occurs to me that item A8 kind of goes very nicely with item A15, which is a resolution on an MOU with D65. And so with the unofficial consent of the committee members, maybe we'll hold off on discussing A5 for now and kind of do A5 and
You mean A8 and A15?
A15 at the same time?
I'm fine with it.
Okay. All right, so no vote on A5 quite yet. We will hold off.
Motion to,
I'm sorry, A8.
I move to table it then would be the proper, since it's been moved.
Okay, let's, all in favor of tabling?
Well, second.
It's been, I'll second. Let's table A8, all by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we will take that off of the table when we get to item A15. Item A9, if somebody would like to make a motion on A9.
Item A9, purchase of 3 vehicles for the Workforce Development Program, lead service line replacement, and 1 vehicle for the Public Works Agency Water Bureau.
Second.
It's been properly moved by Councilmember Reed, seconded by Councilmember Burns. Is there any discussion on item A9? Councilmember Reed.
I'm not sure who removed this, but I want to commend both staff and Councilmember Burns for leading on the lead service line replacement portion of this and creating a program. And I think this expenditure is certainly in line with a lot of those discussions and that were had regarding creating a apprenticeship program. I know we're using, if I'm not mistaken, ARPA funds for this? Yep, we're using ARPA funds for this. I think it's a fairly solid use of ARPA funds, so.
And I understand that the ARPA funds had been previously allocated for this purpose, and we are now just approving the expense. Councilmember Kelly, I think you were the one who pulled this. Do you want to weigh in?
Sure. I just wanted to see if somebody could respond to Mr. Vasilko's question about the vehicles that are being purchased with regard to scoping out possibility of more.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. Sean Cholik, Facilities and Fleet Management. To comment on the question about electrification, that is correct. There are a number of companies that are starting to implement electrification for various types of vehicles. The ones that we're talking about here are heavy-duty construction equipment, and they are not something that we feel confident in moving forward with an electric option at this point. We feel like the technology is not quite there. They haven't been proven and tested enough to make us feel comfortable to invest in them. These are very expensive pieces of equipment, so we want to proceed cautiously. We are on board with electrifying. We do want to get there, but we don't want to do it prematurely where it causes a failure or it negatively impacts our operations. We have recently issued the RFP for fleet electrification and right sizing, and so we will be working with the consultant very closely on that to determine what the trends are looking like, what the options are like out there, and we will eventually push to electrify more of these heavier pieces of equipment. We just don't feel like now is the correct time. As far as the Ford trucks, those also, they're not the very small vehicles. Right now they have the F-150s that are available in electric, and those are good options for certain purposes, but not for water and sewer work. We need something that's a little heavier, a little more durable, and the F-250 and the F-550 is not yet available in electric.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, good. Councilmember Reed.
Yes, thank you. One more question to that same point. What is the, more specifically if you can now, what is the concern with the electric vehicle?
So for the heavy equipment, it's having enough power to actually do the job, enough horsepower.
There's a manufacturer out there who makes an electric version of this?
Well, I don't know if specifically, I don't think specifically for these two pieces of equipment. There are some smaller pieces that they are developing. I know there's electric tractors, things like that. But right now, to my knowledge, there's nothing that's going to fit what our operations require.
Okay. Yeah, I would love us to, as we're moving forward, just do more research in that. I'd imagine if there's some manufacturer that makes a vehicle that is of this class that is electric, I would assume that it would meet some kind of, someone out there, there has to be, I would assume there's a market for it, and I would imagine folks are doing similar work to what we would be doing with a piece of machinery like that. So I just want to know specifically why we feel that the electric version of the machine isn't up to standards for us.
Right, we just don't feel that they're powerful enough for us. They're not going to provide the same durability and power.
I guess, quite frankly, we don't know that yet because we don't know if there are vehicles that are.
Right, there's nothing that we know made by Caterpillar or John Deere that would fit this application.
Okay.
Yeah. And we will work with the vendor or the consultant on the RFP for electrification, and they're going to give us a little more information, do a little more research into what options are looking like for the future and what we may be able to acquire within the next couple of years.
Perfect. Thank you.
I just had a follow-on question. So that the fleet electrification study includes not just cars and trucks, but construction vehicles like wheel loaders and backhoes?
Correct.
We'll look at everything.
Correct. Every type of fleet equipment that we have will be included in that study.
Great. Any other questions on item A9?
And in addition, when you purchase the electric vehicle, you have to have the mechanics that have the training in order to maintain them, and we have to have the charging stations. And we don't have the charging stations yet. That's something that the RFP will help us determine how many charging stations should we have, where should they be located, and then also what type of training our mechanics should have, and then we'll make sure that they get the proper certifications to work on electric vehicles.
Sorry, one last question on this. What is the intended lifespan of a vehicle of the larger equipment here?
So it depends on the particular piece of equipment. For example, this loader is actually, it's still got a little bit of life into it. We're going to put it in as a reserve vehicle and get rid of one of the older ones. And I believe this one is, let's see. Thought I had it written down here. This one's a 2012, so it's approximately 10 years old. Once they get to around 10 years old for these heavier pieces of equipment, we want to really start looking into getting pricing and looking at options for them, especially for water and sewer work. If there's something we don't want going down, it's one of those pieces of equipment. The lead time has also gotten very long for this type of equipment. So we're going to have to start figuring that into our future planning and maybe building that in a little more in advance so that we're not without equipment.
And the mini excavator, is that a similar lifespan, about 10 years?
I'm not an expert in mini excavators, but I would assume that it's very similar to something like the loader where it does go through a lot of really rigorous work and takes a beating, so probably 10 years or so for that one also.
And then if we were to, Kara Pratt is here, and so if you can remind me, our goal, I think we have a goal to electrify our fleet by, do we have a goal to electrify it? By what year? Is it 2030, 2035?
Kara Pratt, Sustainability and Resilience Coordinator. I believe the goal is 50% by 2025. That's all fleets operating in the city of Evanston, and 100% by, I want to say 2050.
Oh, 2050. Okay, that's a ways out. My concern was that if we're buying a vehicle that has a 10-year lifespan and, our goal is to get to 100% by, 2035, for example, or 2030, then purchasing this vehicle now may not be may not help us achieve that goal. And if we were to, and thank you, Kara, if we were to hold off on this, just hypothetically, not saying to make a motion yet, but if we were to hold off on this until the next meeting, would that to allow for fleet to just look into electric vehicles of this sort and give some kind of analysis, would that disrupt services at all?
Yeah, so one thing I will say is one of these vehicles is currently being built right now. It was, we were reached out to that it was available. I believe the sale had fallen through with somebody else. So if we were not to approve it at this meeting, we would miss that chance. They would sell it to somebody else. These days, this equipment is taking a while to build, so something that would take maybe 9 months to a year, could take 24 months at this point. So my recommendation would be to go ahead and move forward with these now. The same thing with the 2 Ford pickup trucks. Those are both readily available on a lot. If we do not approve them at council today, they will be sold to somebody else, and we will lose a deposit that we've had to put down on them.
Okay. And, okay, well, thank you.
Sure.
But certainly, as we move forward, as, from henceforth, whenever vehicles are coming forward, I just really love us to look at electric options as much as possible.
Absolutely. We do try to keep our eye out for them, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that when we get the study back from the consultant, that will
It's going to help to
lay out a
inform us.
strategy to get where we need to go. So Councilmember Burns,
Just like, because even after we get that, things, like I just looked at the F-250 to see when that's coming online. I think it's either all electric or hybrid. Even after we get the study, things will continue to change and develop in the marketplace. So I think what would be helpful is in the packet, if you can include that research. Like, yeah, we know the F-250 is coming out, late 2023 summer. We're going to take a look at it, Like, just to include that in the packet would be helpful so we can follow along as you are in the development of electric vehicles.
That sounds good. And as David mentioned, part of the challenge too is having
Training,
the capacity to charge them, and then the training also.
And that, I think the study will help us determine what those costs are. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right, seeing no further discussion for item A9, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item A9 carries unanimously, which brings us to item A10. If somebody would like to make a motion on item A10?
I move item A10, a 3-year contract renewal with Carbon Day EV charging for cloud and Assure services for the city's EV stations.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Reed and seconded by Councilmember Burns. Is there any discussion on this item? I was the one who pulled it, and I just wanted to flag the question that will be coming before us at some point regarding the city's policy on charging for charging. So far we have a number of electric vehicle charging stations in city parking lots. We don't charge people to use them. They have to pay for parking, but they're not paying for the electricity that they use. And I think that was probably the right thing to do in the early stages of the EV industry as part of our CART plan. But as electric vehicles become increasingly prevalent, we probably don't want to keep giving away free electricity indefinitely. So I don't want to get into the details of that policy discussion here. That would require a separate referral and some additional study before we can make any changes. But I just wanted to put that out there and get some initial feedback from the committee members. Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, well, you opened up the can.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if there's anyone on staff who has any estimate as to what we spend annually on providing that free charging service.
It's in the packet.
Good evening, members of the committee. Mike Rivera, Interim Administrative Services Director. Annually, we're spending approximately $6,000 a year in the electric utility.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a fairly nominal fee, and okay, well, then good to know. Thank you.
All right, any other questions on that item? Seeing none, all in favor of item A10 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item 10 carries unanimously. And so that completes the consent agenda and brings us to items for consideration, the first one of which is item A14. If somebody would like to make a motion.
I move item A14, Resolution 57R22, authorizing the interim city manager to sign a local public agency manager to sign a local public agency engineering services agreement for the Ridge Avenue Construction Engineering Services Agreement with Kimberly Horn Incorporated and the Illinois Department of Transportation for federal funding participation.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved by Councilmember Reed, seconded by Councilmember Burns. Any discussion on item A14? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item A14 passes unanimously, which brings us to item A15, which is also related to item A8.
I will move making a motion to remove item A8 from the table and simultaneously, am I doing too many motions in one?
No, sir. I
Okay.
enjoy this. This
Yes.
is awesome. Keep going.
All right. And jointly to also move concurrently Resolution 60R22, authorizing the interim city manager to execute a memorandum of understanding with the Evanston Skokie School District 65 and to execute an agreement with Corrigan Clark Architects in connection therewith.
Is there a second? It has been moved by Councilmember Reed and seconded by Councilmember Kelly that item A8 be removed from the table, and concurrently a motion on item A15. So let us begin the discussion by focusing on item A8, which involves hiring a consultant to do some community outreach regarding the programming for both Gibbs Morrison and Fleetwood Jourdain. So Councilmember Burns.
The main conflict is under the agreement with Corrigan Clark. It says that they will also provide community engagement services, which shall focus on the community engagement piece and shall include meetings with Fleetwood Jourdain staff, Fifth Ward leaders, neighborhood town halls, community groups, focus groups, and family focus to ascertain the programmatic needs, et cetera. So that is exactly what A8 is for. So basically I think it was, I don't know the exact date, but it says it in here, several months ago now, I started to work with staff because with or without the new school, we were going to move towards thinking through what it looked like to increase programming and potentially even the footprint of Fleetwood. And so we created this RFP process. I think 4 contractors responded to that RFP. And then here we are now today with a one that staff is recommending for us to approve. So the spirit of all of this is not to duplicate, programming, and I think we should continue that spirit and remove that from one of the scopes of Corrigan Clark and make sure that Haran, if that's the way how you pronounce that they're collaborating with Corrigan Clark, but that we remove that from their scope of services.
You're suggesting we approve A8 as in front of us and include the community outreach.
Yeah, we
for
can
both
we can
Fleetwood
approve
Jourdain and
A8
Gibbs.
and then exclude community engagement as. I'll let staff determine how we want to do it, but basically that is they're suggesting in this proposal that they will provide the same service that Haran would provide, and I'd rather the city lead the community engagement around Fleetwood Jourdain in particular. Now, obviously, the Corrigan and Clark may still do community engagement for the Fifth Ward School, but I would like the city to lead on the community engagement for Fleetwood Jourdain.
Council Price.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would leave it in both contracts, and here's why. The school district wants to run 1 million miles an hour on this, and we're in danger of getting Fleetwood Jourdain run over in terms of everything you're trying to do in terms of its programming. When we contract with Corrigan Clark, what we're doing is saying it's not the school district alone that is controlling the space here, the two properties that are involved. You have to pay attention to the programming needs of the Park District. There's no reason by passing both of these that Haran can't lead the community engagement, do all of that, and hand that off to Cordig and Clark. They can design the questions to be asked of the community. They can arrange the feedback and all the rest. The school district's going to have to wait for us to do it. And Haran is probably the right people to work on our mission and what we want. But Cordig and Clark's going to get City of Evanston money. They need to pay attention to the City of Evanston's programming needs as well, however they're delivered by Haran in a report, properly fastened and all the rest. I want that obligation in the contract where they have to do our programming led by Haran. So my advice would be to pass them both. And we're working at 10,000 feet now with the school district, and the next stage is the development agreement and the rest. We want to see if they can actually design a building that meets our needs as part of this whole engagement process. So everything you've said, Councilman Burns, is right on the money. I would just approve them both as is and hold Cordig and Clark's feet to the fire to be responsive to the needs as they're precipitated out and articulated by Haran in the process.
I think the only thing, my concern is if we're paying for it, though. We shouldn't pay, because, again, under project understanding, it says that they're going to hold town meetings and town hall meetings and focus groups. And
Yes, we want them at all the ones that Haran's going to run. We want them there listening.
again, as long as if we remove this, if we remove this, would we pay the same as what is proposed in this packet, wherever it is? Because we're paying for this, right? The city is contracting with Cordig and Clark.
Yes, that's called the programming phase. The architect has to understand what the needs are it's designing the building to do. Architects will come with all sorts of wonderful ideas about what they think the center should be, and clock towers and everything else. But to understand what it is we want to buy, they have to go through the programming analysis, it's called. And the only way they're going to get the programming analysis here, as I understand it from talking to Dave and Stephanie, is by listening to what the community members say they want at Fleetwood Jourdain. I don't know if Audrey has further input on this, but the programming phase only happens by when the owner tells the architect what it is we want. Well, in this case, it's not coming from a staff member, it's not coming from the city manager, it's coming from this process. So we need them to be there to listen to us so that they understand what our programming needs are.
Yeah, that's fine. Again, if we would pay them the same, this suggests that they would be running the focus groups. But if the price wouldn't change and we would pay them the same to listen and observe these meetings or to drive them and manage them themselves, then I'm fine. I want to make sure that this is reflected in that we make any cost adjustments to put this in line with what we're actually going to do, which is Haran's is going to be the one driving those community engagement events. But that's my only concern. So from what you're saying, it sounds like it's the same cost whether they're there to listen and observe or whether they're conducting and managing, facilitating the meetings themselves. So I'm fine with it.
Councilmember Reed, and then Deputy City Manager Stoneback.
No, Council Price really answered what I was looking for, and so as long as Councilmember Burns and everyone else is fine with that, I don't have any questions. No.
Director Stoneback, Deputy City Manager Stoneback.
I just want to point out with the Cordig and Clark proposal, they're indicating the people that would be at the meeting and the hours, and I agree that their proposal probably indicates the staff that would be needed if they were leading the meeting. But if Haran is leading the meeting, Cordig and Clark is not going to have the same people attending the meeting, and the price, this doesn't lock us into paying that amount. This is a proposal with the proposed hours and the hourly rate. So if only 2 people go instead of 4 people, we won't pay for 4 people. So I agree with the.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah.
So we're on the same page. We're on the same page. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I think A8 is behind us. Are there any questions specifically on A15, the MOU? They were moved jointly. Any questions on item A15, which is an MOU with D65? I will just, add my comment that I think this is a great idea. Collaboration between the city and the school districts is to the benefit of the entire community. It's the same taxpayers that fund both of these organizations, and I think this is a great opportunity to collaborate. And I'd like to make sure that Family Focus is part of this discussion as well. And I talked with Councilmember Burns earlier. Since we have three institutions on the same, in very close proximity, serving the same population with similar services, hopefully we are collaborating effectively so that all three organizations will be kind of singing in harmony rather than singing three different beautiful songs at the same time. So, item A8 and A15 have been properly moved. If there is no further discussion, I'll call the vote. All in favor of A8 and A15, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. That is A8 and A15, both passing unanimously. Bringing us to item A16.
I will move Resolution 61R22, authorizing the city manager to amend the parking lease with 1571 Maple Avenue LLC at the City Garage's garage located at 1800 Maple Avenue.
Is there a second?
Second.
Item A16 has been properly moved by Councilmember Reed, seconded by Councilmember Burns. Is there any discussion on this item? I will just note that this one does pair with item P4, which will be in front of us later tonight. P4 gets into the zoning side of things, or this modifies the special use agreement. So these things will kind of move forward simultaneously. So no further questions on A16. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item A16 carries unanimously. Bringing us to item A17.
I will move Resolution 62R22, approving extended hours of liquor service on September 10th, 2022, September 17th, 2022, September 24th, November 5th, November 26th, all in 2022 for Levy Premium Food Services one-day Class Z2 liquor license.
Seconded by
Second.
Councilmember Burns. It's been properly moved by Councilmember Reed, seconded by Councilmember Burns. Is there any discussion on item A17?
Quick question. I know this is in the packet. What are these events? What is this? What are the one-day liquor licenses? Oh, Councilmember Revelle, I guess this is something.
Councilmember Revelle is invited to the podium.
Good evening, everybody. This is traditionally happens for the football season every year. When the football game starts in the morning, the Levy Brothers, Levy Premium Food Service would like to be able to start selling alcohol 2 hours before the game starts, which is 9 a.m. So our ordinance says 10 a.m., so this allows them to start selling the alcohol an hour earlier. And we've approved this routinely for several years now.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with it. I'm surprised our ordinance, so our current ordinance says you can't sell liquor before 10 a.m.?
A Class Z2 liquor license is for 10 a.m.
Okay.
And so
okay.
this is just relevant to that particular one-day license.
I don't think I've ever drank before 10 a.m., but.
It's a little hard to imagine, but anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Yeah, no opposed. Item A17 carries unanimously, bringing us to item A18.
I move approval of Resolution 63R22, recognizing the public benefit of the city paying private sewer repair line costs in excess of $15,000 per repair for a residential property.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Reed, seconded by Councilmember Burns. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, this came up a while ago when Ms. Allen brought this to our attention. I forget who, I think Councilmember Braithwaite was chair at the time, and then it moved over to my chairmanship, where I started having discussions with with Manager Stoneback and others regarding this, as well as the committee, and Councilmember Kelly has also been key in this, moving this forward since my time as chair. I fully support this. I think, I think there's an amendment that just spoke with Councilmember Kelly about, which would be to amend the language here to create this. To put an equity lens on this, and to ensure that the city is only covering the cost in excess of $15,000 for folks for households making over $200,000 a year. And so I move to, I'm sorry. Yes, under 200,000. We only want to help the wealthy folks pay for it. Yes, for folks making under $200,000 a year. So that is a motion. I move that we amend the language to have this only cover the excess cost for folks making under $200,000 a year, for households making under $200,000.
I'll second that.
To be consistent with city council rules,
That's
which
not a rule
agreeably don't necessarily apply in this case, if I could ask you to reduce that to writing to avoid any confusion, I'd appreciate that, but it has been properly moved and seconded, and Councilmember Reed, if you could put that in writing,
Yes,
we will.
and as
do that.
I'm doing that, I do also want to mention, I do understand concerns that have been raised by some of my colleagues about, as Ms. Allen mentioned, this potentially opening the door to other household, the city being on the line for other items, and I tend to disagree with that, in that these services, the water and sewer lines, are the only city services that, other than maybe an alley or a street or a sidewalk, that directly connect to a household, and so I think this is an obligation that we can take on. I view the water line as a public utility, or the sewer line, I should say, as a public utility, whether it's on someone's property line or not. We need everyone to have access to sewer, and we should ensure that no one is forced out of their home, or forced to live in unsanitary or safe conditions, or forced, out of Evanston because they can't afford exorbitant fees related to a faulty sewer line past the property line. And so I'm fully in support of this, and hoping this will move forward at council. I certainly want to examine, I think for folks who are living in zones where Ms. Allen is living, I think, I would love to explore, those folks kind of opting into almost like an insurance payment, where they'd make some kind of payment to help cover the cost above the $15,000, and I'm wondering if that's something that we can have staff examine. But separate of that, I am happy to move this forward.
Councilmember Kelly.
I'm sorry, are we voting on that amended language? I seconded it? Or
Not
still-
yet. Well,
not
we'll
yet?
vote on it as
Okay.
soon as we see the
So I guess
language.
the other piece, though, that I just would want to add is that this also go back to January 21st, from the time Ms. Allen first brought this to the attention of APW. That would seem really sort of mean-spirited if we started this after she brought it to our attention. So I would ask that this also, I believe it was brought to our attention first in January.
Yeah.
Yes?
Well, if I may, both of you interject here, and we can certainly get Council Price's opinion on this. I understand, Ms. Allen and other folks' situation that may have occurred before we passed this and before we allocate some funding for this annually, but I fear that if we do something retroactively, that it maybe does open us up to, if we say we're going to go back a year or two, do folks who, right outside of that, they're 3 years, they had a sewer line fail 3 years out, do they have cause to, bring litigation to the city and say, well, why'd you stop at 2 years? Is this an arbitrary line?
If I wasn't quite finished, but I think from the point that the discussion began, the public discussion at APW, that makes sense to draw the line there. I also just want to say this is I agree with Councilmember Reed. This is very much a question of equity. I very much support the idea of saying for anybody who earns under $200,000 that they would be responsible for up to $15,000, which is a lot, and the city would pick up the tab after that, and anybody who earns over that would be responsible for the full tab. There are many cities, it should be noted, across the United States who offer financial assistance for this lateral restoration of sewer lines. For example, Des Plaines does, Madison does, Bartlett does, Elk Grove, Portland. I think we can also do this. I think it's completely, and again, this is for areas, public areas, parkways, easements, streets. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about private property. This is, I think, completely reasonable for us to do this. I think it's going to amount to minimal expenses. But I absolutely feel this should begin from the date that we started contemplating this and almost move forward on this. So I ask that also be included. Thank you.
Council Price, I'm just curious if you have a response for Councilmember Reed.
Well, as usual, Councilmember Reed does have his finger on a data point to be considered, but I think that the demarcation line that Councilmember Kelly has picked is perfectly reasonable. The general due process law is that when it comes to opening the City of Evanston checkbook and writing those checks, you have a lot more reasonable discretion to make those legislative choices and not have them second guessed. So we're not discriminating here on the basis of any sort of protected class in terms of the timing. It's more or less going to be what heartburn you get politically from people who are just outside the window, but that's the choice you're going to make here. So it doesn't give me any pause if this gets amended to have the deadline Councilmember Kelly has suggested.
Deputy Manager Stoneback requested to be acknowledged.
I only suggest that we try to. I only suggest that we try to tie this to some index, because at some point $200,000 won't be the same as $200,000 as it is now. So I don't know if you want to go with some value of AMI or something like that. But
yeah, we can tie it to area
medium income,
PI, or I think we could tie the $200,000 to inflation, and as that moves forward, it would automatically move up with inflation.
We're getting now into the territory that I was hoping to avoid, which is writing the legislation on the dais here,
I wonder
which
if
isn't
this,
really conducive to having an effective conversation.
I wonder if this can be brought back to the next APW meeting. I think we're pretty in alignment with, or at least a necessary majority, and I thank the chair for bringing this forward, is in alignment on this. And so I would love to, with those amendments, so I'll make a friendly amendment to my motion, and then ask that that we move to have this come back to our next meeting.
Second.
Is there any, it's been properly moved and seconded to hold this item until the next A&PW committee meeting, which I believe trumps the previous motions, which we have not yet voted on.
Sure.
Is there any discussion on this motion? I would like to weigh in at this point, and
I got my light on.
Sorry, Councilmember Burns, and then I'll go.
Yeah, I'm just curious, the $50 million unfunded liability, I believe that appeared in a previous packet. Is that true? I just want to, is it in this packet? I can't see it.
It's
As
in
far as
this
the
current
breakdown as to-
packet, and it's a revised number than what had been stated previously because the scenario has changed. So the 50 million is based on the cost exceeding $15,000, and it was calculated on all the sewer services in Evanston that are deep and in sandy soil and on state highways that at some point in their life will fail. And so that's why that dollar figure was put out. We don't know when they will fail, but at some point, everything fails.
And so if I could clarify, those numbers are based on deep, busy street, sandy soil, but do not include other sewer laterals that could conceivably be very expensive because they're very long, running down half the block, serving multiple neighbors, et cetera.
Correct.
And what we are being asked to approve here would apply to that scenario as well.
That is correct.
And how prevalent is, is that situation around Evanston?
It's unknown. There are not many, but we know of some.
Right. So we don't know what our financial exposure would be here.
That is correct.
Over, the short term, over the long term.
Yes.
But, conceivably, several $1 million at least.
The liability is there over time for that amount of money, yes.
Right. And I'm concerned about that, and as sympathetic as I am to Ms. Allen, who has this extraordinary.
And Chair, if I could just finish my question. I still have this is really my turn.
Okay,
people
go ahead.
looked into it. So the 50 million, we don't know over what period of time that is. Even
No.
a rough estimate, just a wild guess, anything?
Again, just looking at the chart that was provided in the memo, it started out where we'd have 1 to 3 of these a year. In 2020, we had 5. In 2021, we had 10. I think that varies based on whether or not you have a drought. If you have dry weather, the ground moves, causes problems like this. So it's weather dependent and it's unknown, but every year the sewer services get another year older.
The last thing is and I would not support this today. I would need this to come back because I do not like writing this type of policy on the fly. But what I'm interested in is like a category where someone could enter into a loan, a category of like what can be paid back to the city, and then also what is a grant. I don't know if I'm just because it's over $15,000. Let's say it's $20,000. We cover the whole cost. For that amount, $5,000, we might be able to just extend a loan to the person that they pay back, right? Because the insurance will cover up to, I think, $10,000, and they're paying, a monthly amount on it. But $45,000, which I think is what's before us, it makes sense for a large portion of that to be provided in a grant. But there's a window in here for me where I think it should be extended as a loan and not a grant. I think we should, if it's $20,000, it's $5,000, we extend a $5,000 loan, you could pay it back over time. And so that's where I'm at right now. So I would like to do some research, between now and the next meeting, do some research on how we can have a grant program for a certain amount, but also a loan program, no interest, that people would pay back over time.
Councilmember Reed.
Oh,
Councilmember Reed.
Chair
goes
well,
last,
actually,
I guess.
I had questions based on what you were asking, and so you were just speaking about laterals on the public side, or what was the exposure that you were talking about with Manager Stoneback?
There are a number of houses throughout town, mine included, that have laterals that don't go straight from the house to the street. They might
Your house to your neighbor's house.
In my case, 3 neighbors feed out into a lateral, to a sewer line in the alley. That line connects to the city's line in the street. If anything happens in the alley, it's up to me and my neighbors to sort it out, and who knows how much that would cost, and I would not be looking forward to having that discussion with my neighbors. But that's not a unique situation. We have, because Evanston has been around for 100 years, and we didn't have quite the regulations in place when construction first started a century or more ago. We have an unknown liability with sewer services in unknown locations. And Director Stoneback, you can kind of speak to this.
You might have remembered Councilmember Rainey and Matt Fleming, and the resident whose sewer service came out to the parkway and then ran under the parkway for a long distance, and we were encouraged to pay for that, and this wasn't in place at that time. There's another house in Councilmember Ravel's ward where they live on Sheridan Road. There is no sewer right in front of their house on Sheridan Road, so it comes out to the parkway on Sheridan Road and goes south down to Isabella Street. There's another home, and I can't tell you where it is, but there's an alley. The house is surrounded by alleys, not even any street, and their sewer service goes west in one alley, north in another alley, and out. And
what I'm trying to understand is what is different about how is that different than what we're talking about here? I mean, it seems like even in your situation that you mentioned that, especially if one of those homeowners made less than, collectively their household made less than $200,000, they would be eligible to get their portion covered, and anyone who didn't. So I'm not sure how this adds any additional exposure. Can you explain how the scenario that Councilmember Newsom is bringing up adds additional exposure to what
the
we're
numbers
talking
that
about
we're looking at here were based only on deep, busy street, sandy soil. They do not include situations.
the very long sewer services that if you have to, I believe Miss Allen's repair was 20 feet or less. If we have to repair something that's more along the line of 50 feet, that cost can get up and exceed to $25,000. So it's adding a different type of condition. The length of the sewer service is another condition in which the city could be held responsible for costs over $15,000 if this resolution is.
And so if I have one of these long laterals that stretches out into an alley, or I'm sorry, did I hear that correctly, that some of these that you mentioned, such as in Councilmember Ravel's ward, stretch out into an alley and there's no other houses around, and so wouldn't the city normally be on the hook for the portion that's not on the property owner's?
No, our ordinance, like all municipalities around us, state
From
that
the
the
main
homeowners,
to wherever, however
from the
long that
main
is?
to the home,
Okay.
the entire length is the homeowner's responsibility.
Okay, yeah, so then I guess I would love to see numbers that include those expenses as well, and an estimate.
And how much do those typically cost? Do we know?
Our challenge is that we don't know, the city doesn't know where they are because they are not city infrastructure. So we don't, I know of some in which we've had issues over the past couple of years. I don't know all of them throughout the city. So I would be unable to come up with a cost estimate.
Do we know how much it typically costs to, for one though, to replace one of those longer lines?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay, I would be interested in that.
Yeah, I
to know
guess
that.
even getting an estimate of if it is a, I think I heard you say 20 or 30 foot line, and it's in an area where we have normal conditions, would that equate to a $15,000 plus bill? And I guess I'm fine supporting anyone who has to pay more than $15,000 for any water line issue, or I'm sorry, sewer line issue, regardless of if it's because it's extremely deep or it's because it's a long line.
So the resolution, I believe,
Correct.
indicates that the Director of Public Works has to come up with the scenario in which this will be paid. It would be my intention that it was only if the property was experiencing a sewer backup. Because if you go in and you close circuit, and this didn't happen for Miss Allen's, but there's other situations where properties go in and they close circuit TV their sewer service, then it's possible to put a sewer liner in through your sewer service. And then that cost is less expensive than excavating. So somebody, if we pass this, they're going to say, well, I'm not going to put the sewer line in because that would be all mine, and it, say it's $16,000. I need a whole lot more clarification. In Miss Allen's situation, sewage was backing up into her basement. She didn't have sewer service at all. So in my opinion, is when the city would get involved, not if somebody just wants to make repair.
Yeah.
As Miss Allen indicated, I didn't know the numbers on the sewer repairs until once we start moving along this path. I had to sit there and go through all the permits and try to figure this out. And there were other situations where homeowners, they put in overhead sewers, and it was over $15,000. I did not include that in these costs, but that's what my challenge is, that we're going to have homeowners, and I thank you for the $200,000 income, but I believe that's a lot of people in Evanston make less than $200,000. So if they put in overhead sewers, if they
Households.
do a household, right? I mean, this could be, we could wind up paying for a lot of different things if we didn't qualify it to say it only happens if you have a sewer emergency at this time with sewage backing up into your basement. That would be one of the things I would write in to say that this is when the city gets involved.
I'd want that in the resolution, and to not. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are and reflected in the resolution rather than having it happen at a later point. I think that makes perfect sense that it's in these emergency situations that we would provide this. So I'd also just love to see that reflected in the resolution.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly, I see your light is on. I would like to take the floor here for a few minutes. And first, I have a question for Manager Stoneback regarding what common practice is in other cities. And you've cited a study from 2014 or a survey that indicated 23 of 23 municipalities did not offer any compensation.
In that survey, I think there were 2 municipalities that offered some assistance. What your question was, who was responsible for it. So I concur with Councilmember Kelly, and I forget what communities were. One pays for the street restoration, which, is a relatively low cost. And then I forget what the other one was, maybe, several thousand, $3,000 or something like that. So, though in the Northwest Municipal Conference surveys, there was 2 municipalities that indicate they offered some financial assistance at a low amount, but in all the communities, the homeowner was responsible from the house to the connection to the mainline sewer.
Thank you. So I will just, share my position here. As much as I'm sympathetic to Ms. Allen, it really, I would hate to be in her shoes with that high of a sewer bill, kind of unanticipated, and been in this situation with myself at my own house with a much lower dollar amount. So I can empathize here, but as a fiduciary for the city of Evanston, I'm really, really reluctant to open up financial exposure for the city that we don't know what it is. We don't know, what private sewer laterals. We don't have a map of private sewer laterals in town, so we don't know, and it's not knowable, what the price tag could be on this. And so, it is common practice that homeowners incur the expense and bear the responsibility for sewer laterals, and I am not going to vote in favor of this resolution. At least if we were going to vote tonight, I would vote no. We'll see how this evolves. But I do think we need to be cognizant of imposing unknown millions of dollars of expense on Evanston residents, whether that's on our tax bill or whether that's through our water and sewer fees. And, we do need to use a big chunk of that water fee for lead service line replacement. So I just think it's not financially prudent to offer this assistance, as sympathetic as I am to Ms. Allen. So that's my position on it. We're still holding on, holding on the resolution or the motion to hold this until our next meeting. Ms. Allen, would you like to say a few words? And that Councilmember Kelly, if that's all right, we'll let. Okay, and then let's wrap this up. We need to. It's going to get held, so let's.
There's a couple of things.
Let's close this out fairly quickly here. We're 20 minutes behind schedule.
If you're looking at the cost that the city will bear and talking about a $50 million liability, if you look at the numbers that Director Stonebeck presented in his in the most recent agenda, and there from 2016 to 2021, there were 23 instances where sewer repairs were over $15,000, and the amount in excess of those 23 repairs equaled almost $153,000. So if you divide that by the 6 years, each year, that's $25,000 a year you're looking at. You're not looking at millions of dollars at any given time. Yes, it's true the sewers are old and they're going to break. Everything does. But they're not going to break all 1,700 at-risk sewers at one time. This is the kind of thing that's going to be a one-off, just like mine is. I don't think anybody knows anybody who paid $45,000 to fix a sewer under Gulf Road. I mean, think about it if you woke up to that. And the idea of it backing up into your house is, yes, very important, but mine not only backed up into my house, I had feces on my lawn for 3+ months before this could be fixed. So there's a lot more to this than just, just the amount that's coming out of the sewer budget. And we can push this out another couple of weeks if you want to, but I think we've talked about this over and over and over again, and we've talked about insurance. Most people don't have sewer insurance, and if they do, it'll only pay for about $8,000 or $10,000. So I don't know what else to tell you, but thus far, as far as I'm concerned, I've been the highest sewer bill in the city, and it's not right. It's over 10% of the value of my home.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly, your light is on. Councilmember Reed, your light is on. Looking at the time, and it looks like this is going to be held for some future discussion. I'm hoping that we can wrap this up fairly quickly. So, Councilmember Kelly.
Okay. I just want to say, many of the cities that do this, it's a strict percentage that oftentimes gets picked up by the city. I think we're developing a really nicely tailored proposal for Evanston where it's, equity, where it's, looking at it more through a lens of equity so that it's anybody who earns under $200,000 still has to pay up to $15,000, but after that, the city picks up. I think this is a nice arrangement for Evanston. I also want to say, currently, it is true that insurance does not pay for this. Those laterals is highly unusual that people have insurance that would cover that. I think we can always come back to this in a couple of years and hope that their insurance policies change and that there's a movement to have this included, in which case we could either remove it altogether or modify it. But I think currently this is absolutely the right thing to do. We're here for our residents. So I think we should move forward. I just want to be clear, we're going to be holding it so that we can include that amended language that Councilmember Reed said regarding the $200,000 as well as the date of January. It was January of 2021, to when we first began discussing this. And then also Director Stonebeck, it would be under emergency circumstances. I think those are what we'd like to see included.
As well as Councilmember Burns would like to explore a potential loan option as well.
We have no interest loans for home improvement. I think between maybe 15 to 20, 15 to 25, it's a no interest loan and not a all out grant. So that
or a lien or some other option.
Well, that's what that is. It's a no interest loan that if it's not paid, it's a lien on the property, but it's only executed if you don't pay it off. But typically we can discuss it. But 15 to 20, 15 to 25, I think that is a loan. I don't think that's a grant. I think it's a loan. And then maybe 30 to 45 or whatever.
Manager Stonebeck also mentioned indexing the $200,000 salary level to inflation.
Yeah.
I would also add indexing the cost of the sewer repair to inflation as well.
Oh, yeah.
Councilmember Reed, your light is on.
And maybe I'm the last person on this.
Hopefully you will be.
Yes. I just wanted to highlight again why I think this is important for the city. As Ms. Allen just illustrated there, if this isn't taken care of, and if we have someone in our city who can't afford to take care of this, that means that it becomes a public health concern. I don't know if our public health director is here. I don't know if we need a public health director to know that having, feces on your lawn and in your basement is a public health emergency, both for the people who live in the house and for the general community. So, I think that's why this is so critically important that the city, put our hands in this and get a little dirty to make sure that we're doing right by everybody. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there's being no further discussion, the motion to hold is now up for a vote, and I will ask Manager Stoneback to call a roll.
So it's actually a table and not a motion.
Table,
Yeah,
excuse
can't
me.
hold it.
Excuse me, table. Thank you for that correction.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Newsom.
No. By a 3-1 vote, item A18 is tabled for some additional work and will come back to us at our next meeting. Which brings us to item A19. Councilmember Reed, if you'd like to do the honors.
Yes, I will move resolution, or I'll move item A19, Ordinance 82022, revising Chapter 21, Green Building Ordinance of the of City Code, Title 4, Building Regulations.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Reed, seconded by Councilmember Burns. Is there any discussion on item A19? Anybody? I will like to weigh in here and just acknowledge Kara Pratt for the work she's done here. We're ahead of schedule, right? You're indicating, and Angel Schnur for doing the work as well. So thank you both. We're ahead of schedule. This was on our action plan for November, and so we're several months ahead on this one. And I'll also acknowledge the help from community experts, Joel Freeman, Leonard Ciara. You also ran this by the Utilities Commission, so we have the Evanston Brain Trust has weighed in here, and I'm happy to vote in favor of this. I will acknowledge Mr. Vasilko, does have a point that smaller buildings are not included in this ordinance. I think we acknowledge that. We knew that from the beginning, and the intent with passing A19 tonight is not to forget about those smaller residences and existing buildings, but yeah, I think we agree that those need to receive some attention in the future. So, Councilmember Reed.
Yes, for Angel or Kara, whoever is most prepared to answer this, why aren't we including the smaller buildings?
Hello?
Hi, good evening, Council Member, our Chair Newsma and Committee, Angel Schnur, Building and Inspection Services Manager. We proposed eliminating the use of the measures for the smaller projects just for the cost prohibitiveness of it right now. We are looking at different alternatives, and the use of IGCC is a low-cost alternative for those smaller projects. So we tried to look at it as a holistic approach versus just making everybody follow one thing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on item A19? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? By a unanimous vote, item A19 is passed, which brings us to item A20. Councilmember Reed?
I will move item A20, Ordinance 83022, amending Title 4 of the City Code, Building Regulations by adding Chapter 24, Bird-Friendly Building Design.
And seconded by Councilmember Burns. It's been properly moved by Councilmember Reed, seconded by Councilmember Burns. Is there any discussion on item A20? Councilmember Reed, is this your light from last time, or is this a new light?
From now.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, I just want well, I'll let the chair thank staff and folks, but thank you, and I'll let the chair specifically thank folks. But I personally want to thank, CGE and residents of my ward. I had a really good conversation with Judy Pollock this weekend regarding this. I am in full support here of the bird-friendly building design. I have a quick question for Angel, again, with property standards. And I live in an apartment building, and it's a, multi-story apartment building, and we have dryer vents that are on the facade. In fact, I have some pictures that I can maybe send to you or show you later. And these dryer vents do not have like a mesh covering over them. And so in spring, birds go into the dryer vents, and then a few weeks later, you walk out onto the sidewalk, and there's just all along where the dryer vents are, little baby birds who have fallen out of the nest and out of the dryer vents. Does our building code require that there is like a mesh wiring or something?
I don't know that it actually requires it, but I could see where that would be an important piece of the inspection as we continue to do rental inspections and pick those back up. So I will definitely bring that up to staff to make sure that they're looking at that.
Yeah, and if they do not require a wire mesh or something, I'd love to see that. This is an ordinance, we have time, but I'd love to see that reflected somewhere. So they're, we're encouraging the birds to go somewhere safer.
I do know that we require like a covering of some sort, but I don't know if we have specific requirements for the mesh underneath the type that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So we don't let you have just a hole in the side of the building for sure.
You have to have
but
the small.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then separate of that, I fully support this. I know that folks, particularly folks like Leslie Shad and CG, I'm sorry, the group in Evanston isn't CG. They're
Bird Friendly.
Bird Friendly Evanston has, really been working on this for a long time, and I think that illustrates, separate of this issue, the importance of DAPR and having a public meeting with DAPR, because it's been a great opportunity for many developers to voluntarily opt into creating more bird-friendly design with some of our larger buildings and throughout the city, but particularly in our downtown. So thank you to the advocates, thank you to staff for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have one more question, and this is just a kind of point of order question for this and, A19. Did these items go through the referrals committee? Do we have anyone who can answer that?
I cannot answer that one. But the chair will recognize Councilmember Ravel.
Thank you. No, they did not go to the referrals committee. I mean, they were really in the works before with the previous council, so it's hard to say that they needed to go to the referrals committee.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, yes, so Councilmember Reed already thanked Leslie Shad, Libby Hill, Judy Pollock. Thank you to all our bird-friendly Evanston friends. Since we're getting late, let's call the vote on this one. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item A20 carries unanimously. That brings us to items for discussion. Item D1. Do we need to make a motion on an item for discussion?
Yes, I move discussion of item D1, discussion of city observance of Juneteenth as a paid city holiday.
And seconded by?
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Reed and seconded by Councilmember Burns to discuss Juneteenth as a paid city holiday. Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, I forget exactly where this comes from, but I certainly know that I reached out to our former city manager, Kelly Gandersky, about this. I did notice that on Monday, Juneteenth, I think that was celebrated on a Monday, or the holiday fell on a Monday. City staff did not have that day off, while folks all across our state and at this point our nation, because President Biden has made Juneteenth a federal holiday, had the day off, and so I certainly think the city of Evanston should as well. So I'm 100% in support of this, and I'm assuming our manager, Luke Stowe, is in support of this as well, and he's indicating yes, he is, with a head nod. So this makes perfect sense to me.
Any other comment? So we would need to clarify, I'm in support as well, but we would need to clarify if June 19th falls on a weekend, what would we do in that case?
I think it's always celebrated or recognized on the Monday after the weekend. Is that true?
I think it's always June 19th, correct? So we'd have to decide if it falls on a Saturday or Sunday.
But I think the recognition of the holiday, if it does fall on a weekend, still the recognition is on the Monday following that. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Well, that's not the case for like the state of Illinois, because you get paid only if it's Monday through Friday. You don't get paid on the weekend. So some states do observe it. If it falls on a Saturday, you get Friday off. If it falls on a Sunday, you get Monday off. The state of Illinois itself, to my knowledge, does not do that. If it falls on a Saturday or Sunday, you don't get Friday or Monday off.
So Juneteenth, just looking at my calendar, this year fell on a Sunday, and so my recollection is because it fell on that Sunday, everyone recognized the holiday or the day off on Monday the 20th, and that was my recollection. And so I think that's even why we're having this discussion now, is because we are one of the few local institutions that I know of that did not have that Monday, June 20th off.
Anybody else want to weigh in? I think if not, the feedback that we're giving is that we do want to recognize the holiday, and if it falls on a weekend, the City of Evanston employees would get the Monday off.
Correct.
Right. Understanding that there would be some, side effects with summer camps and, some impacts on families who would, be forced to find alternative arrangements for childcare. Okay. Interim City Manager Stowe, do you have the feedback you need on this one?
Thank you.
Okay, great. That brings us to items for communication. Are there any items for communication?
I just have one question, Chair. I believe at our next meeting is the the trucks prohibited item coming to our next meeting for the 8th Ward, prohibiting trucks on certain streets within the 8th Ward.
I'm not familiar with that one.
That's near Cleston Wholesale.
I would have to check.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Let's follow up on that separately.
Yeah.
Okay. There being no further business to come before the committee, I declare this meeting adjourned.